From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on August 19th, 2024 from the Advocate Center that's home of the Chicago Bulls, coming to you from Chicago for the Democratic National Convention, where members of the South Carolina delegation are here to formally nominate Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as the Democratic Party's ticket. In today's podcast, we bring you our first look at the week with South Carolina Democratic Party Chairwoman Christale Sen. And we also have some brief remarks from California Congressman Khanna, who spoke before the delegation this morning. He is one of many major Democrats who will be speaking before the early voting states party faithful this week. We also will hear in this podcast from one of our delegates. You know him, I know him, that's former Charleston Senator Marlon Kimpson.
Brown liquor.
I'm pretty sure I'll be having some brown liquor with him before this week is out. Send your thoughts and prayers. And just as a programming note, we will be here throughout the week bringing you podcasts and live updates on southcarolinapublicradio.org. I'm out here with Marlon Schechter and Amy Crouch, our producer, so follow along with us on our social media accounts, Twitter, Instagram, as well as, like I said, southcarolinapublicradio.org. We're going to be updating our live blog there so you can get all the details, all the South Carolina-specific details you want. And of course, we want to know what's going on with you. That's why we have a voicemail box set up at 803-563-7169. Give us a shout. Tell us what's on your mind. We are not too far away from the election, though we don't need to talk about news and politics in the wind-down section. We want to hear what's going on with you. School is back in session, folks. 803-563-7169. Welcome to day one of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois. Yes, Team SCDP/South Carolina Public Radio is in the Windy City covering our delegation of 88 delegates and alternates here, as well as their activities around the DNC. A quick little background note on Chicago, Chi-Town, the Windy City. Chicago is a Democratic stronghold here in the blue state of Illinois, but the advantage of being here is that we're close to the battleground states of Michigan and Wisconsin. Kind of important. Of course, you might remember Wisconsin. We were in Milwaukee last month for the Republicans. Now we're here for the Democrats. We're playing it safe. We're playing it fair and even, folks, just for you.
Thank you.
Now, Chicago last hosted the Democrats in 1996 for then President Bill Clinton's re-election. And of course, 1968, who could forget that? But we're focusing now on 2024. And like I said, coming to you from the Chicago Bulls training facility in the Advocate Center, which is home to the unassigned media press file. All the glamour, folks. I'm learning how to dunk, I think, this week, perhaps on myself. We are within the perimeter, and we are nearby the United Center, where everything is going down at the convention itself. You'll be watching all that coverage from the United Center right next door here. Now, earlier today, we were at the delegation breakfast at the Hyatt Regency in downtown Chicago. Y'all, we are not in the suburbs of Milwaukee like we were for the Republicans. We are in the big city, and we were in a huge hotel where there are multiple major state delegations, including California, Vice President Kamala Harris's crew, as well as Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, and Alaska, just to name a few. Now, among our delegates and folks who are around, we spotted Senate Majority Leader Brad Hutto, Senators Gerald Malloy, Dion Tedder, and Margie Bright Matthews. There were also State House Representatives John King, Heather Bauer, and Andy McDaniel. Some other folks, like former Senator Marlon Kimpson and former SCDP Chairman Trav Robertson, are delegates as well, and they were mingling about. There are also folks who are running for office, including 1st Congressional District Democrat Michael B. Moore, who is challenging Congresswoman Nancy Mace, and 4th District Democrat Catherine Harvey, who is running against Congressman William Timmons. Now, to kick us off, here's my conversation with Chairwoman Christale Sen about the historic nature of this convention and what this past month has been like for politics and our country.
You know, it's awesome. Everybody's excited. You know, we've got all these principals coming through. We're in a great hotel. We were in a hotel with, I think, 13 other states. The enthusiasm, I think, is just becoming palpable, but there is a lot of security, lots of security, but it's great. We're having a great time so far.
Crystal, let's talk about the historic nature of this convention. We have Vice President Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. A woman of color is now the nominee of a major political party. What's that signal to you about the state of the party, state of this country, and for South Carolinians?
I think it signals that, we're trying to move forward. Our party is definitely doing the work to move forward. We're the party of diversity. We're the party, the big tent party. So to me, it's a big signal that we're trying to move forward and focus on qualifications and not be distracted by race and gender.
And what's it mean for you when we see maybe what the Republicans are talking about versus what the Democrats are talking about? Talking about moving forward in that agenda that we want to hear. We're going to hear from big leaders this week, including Vice President Harris.
I think Republicans are always talking about distractions because they don't have any real solutions to policies, anything to really uplift the American people. And Democrats and Kamala Harris are trying to talk about solutions and how we uplift the American people. And I think a part of that enthusiasm for her is a level of trust, that we trust her to get things done.
It's been an interesting month in politics, let alone for the Democratic Party too, when we see what happened with President Joe Biden saying he wasn't going to run for a second term, and then we saw Vice President Harris step up to this moment. What's it been like to see that, and what's your read on the whole past month?
The past month has just been, unbelievable. It's been unprecedented, and it just showed, that President Joe Biden is thinking about the country. He's not thinking about himself, and I think that he will go down in history as one of the most, transformative presidents of our time. And what he did, it's just unbelievable that he would, pass over the seat of power and pass it along to a woman, and a woman that is black. That's just never been done before. So it's amazing, and we're going to celebrate him tonight, and I'm looking forward to that moment.
And Christale, tell me about just how that moment went down. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts that weekend when President Joe Biden said that he wasn't going to seek that second term. South Carolina Democratic Party was already there with all of its delegates saying we are behind Vice President Harris. It seemed like there could have been a moment there where maybe there could have been some other candidates, but that was short-lived. Tell us about how that went down, how quickly the South Carolina Democratic Party unified behind Harris.
Oh, very quickly. It happened, I think it was a Sunday, if I remember. It feels like Sunday 5 years ago, but it was just a few weeks ago. We were already planning to have our meeting to just kind of talk through some housekeeping items for our delegates. There was a lot of, things happening, so we really wanted to just kind of get them to relax. So we met, and we just really did what we needed to do and endorsed Kamala Harris, and we were glad to be the first early primary state to do so.
Yeah, what do you think that signaled at that time? I mean, do you think that's something that, there was a possibility that people weren't going to get behind her, or was it just like, no, there's no option here?
We didn't feel that in our delegation, that there wasn't a possibility that people weren't going to get behind her. People wanted to maybe think of a second process, but I just kind of let people know that we had a process. It was transparent, and it was a lot of work for our party, but we've already done that work, and she was a major part of that process. So folks are ready to get behind her.
Tell me about that, how things change. I mean, I feel like there's been a bit more energy with the Democratic Party right now. We're seeing that in her crowd sizes, the fundraising. What's it been like to see all that happening right now when we're some 78, 79 days away from general election?
It's been exciting, and also, I feel like Democrats don't win if we're not exciting. So it's giving us more confidence that we are, heading towards victory in November.
And just a couple of final questions here, Crystal. When we look at some of the big names coming through the South Carolina delegation this week, talking to the delegation at breakfast every morning down here in Chicago, a lot of big names versus some other delegations. They don't get these big names. Tell us about how South Carolina kind of gets these top people coming through, and I guess our draw to these folks.
The road to the White House leads through South Carolina. And if you have presidential hopes, you got to come and plant your flag in South Carolina and build those relationships early, because that's going to matter, right? South Carolina, if you can get out of the South Carolina primary on top, history shows us that you go on to be the nominee, and folks know that. So they want to get in front of these delegates because these are our leaders, these are our activists. So these are the folks that are going to help them run their campaigns and set up phone banks and knock doors. So it's a great space to be in.
Any other things that you're watching for this week that folks should be watching for this week?
I was talking to another reporter, and we were talking about the buttons. Trading buttons used to be a big thing. And we've got some buttons in our swag bag, so I want to see if folks are still, into trading buttons. And so that's what I'll be kind of watching for.
And I know I asked you about it a moment ago, but just tell me about the vibe you're getting, the feelings that you're getting from folks in terms of our delegation and other delegations right now. It's just day one, but what's it like down here?
People are excited. People are happy. People are full of joy. Like this is our big revival, and it really, really feels like a revival. Like we're going to get that last boost of energy that we need to do the work to win in November.
Crystal Spain, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Monday is the lightest day for our delegation's speakers, but we do have California Congressman Khanna, who spoke at the breakfast, where he said that the Democratic Party is truly the party of Abraham Lincoln, though Lincoln was a Republican and is a figure that the GOP claims. And nevertheless, here is Khanna's reasoning for that statement.
My friends, the Democrats have become the party of Lincoln. We are running this election about what type of America are we going to be? Are we going to be an America where it does not matter what your race is, how many generations you can trace back your heritage, where you can be the daughter of an immigrant, a woman, an African American, Asian American, Indian American, and still be president of the United States? Or are we going to be a nation where you have to have a particular nationalistic view of this country? That is what is at stake. It's not just about Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. It's about what type of America are we going to be? I believe deep down that this is an America that is open to every person, that this is an America, as Frederick Douglass and Lincoln believed, that will be a composite nation, a nation that takes the best traditions of all parts of the world and makes it a composite nation. And when we elect Kamala Harris as President of the United States, that will be the biggest vindication of Lincoln and Douglas's vision. South Carolina, let's go do this in January.
Marlon Schechter also caught up with former Senator Marlon Kimpson of Charleston. You may know Kimpson as a financial trial lawyer who joined the Biden administration last spring as part of the Advisory Committee for Trade Policy and Negotiations. But let's be real, you know him from our sound effects like this,
Data,
and this,
brown liquor,
and this.
Where's Miss Schechter been?
Yeah, he is a font of sound bites, folks. Now, that committee that he's on helps advise the U.S. Trade Representative, and they meet monthly virtually and also quarterly in person. But Marlon was asking him more about the current mood in Chicago and the state of the Democratic Party itself.
There's a feeling of joy. There's a feeling of excitement. This is my third convention. I've never seen this many people. We own to something here. It's big. It's tremendous. You can't pack any more people into that room we just left. My hotel is full. The cab line was full. The airplane was full. The bus was full. The Uber line is flowing out past the airport onto the international highway. All assembling for what is a historic moment. The nomination of Kamala Harris, our vice president who served us well, as the presumptive nominee, or the nominee now, of our party. And so Chicago is truly lit. It's lit on fire with Harris Walz. As you see, we're fired up and we're ready to go.
Marlon also asked the former South Carolina senator of 10 years about how Harris's selection has changed the dynamic and energy in the party. Here's Kimpson.
Let me just be clear. I was excited even before the Harris nomination. And I honestly think that the president would have won re-election. The stakes are too high for us to turn back. We need to continue to move forward. I mean, I've heard that from independents. I've heard it from even Republicans. We got Adam Kinzinger speaking tonight. He endorsed President Biden before Biden withdrew from the race. And so, yes, there have been a change of events, and I'm glad it ended the way it did. The president unselfishly chose to hand the mantle to a newer generation. And I'm all for passing the torch. As you know, I left the state Senate, endorsed a 30-year-old something young man who's with me here today. And I just think there's something about molding the next generation of leadership. And when Biden, the president, had to make tough decisions, he put the country before himself. And I think that is the modeled leadership that's exemplary for all of us. It should be a message for the Republicans as well. But they've allowed a man who is challenged ethically to hijack their party and essentially have a cult-like following. You look at their platform. As you know, I was a member of the Democratic Party platform drafting committee. We had robust debate. We had hearings. We had testimony from all constituency groups who were interested in weighing on our platform. You contrast that what happened with the Republican Party. There was an edict from the Trump Towers sent over across the street at their convention. 2-hour conversation. They wholeheartedly adopted it. Many of the delegates didn't even know what was in it and disagreed in a material way with many of the provisions, but that's the difference in operation. We got protesters out there. We've invited them in to the table to talk about their concerns. We're a big tent party. And that is emblematic and exemplary of the work of our platform, the work of the delegates, as you saw a minute ago in our breakfast meeting. We are embracing a number of ideas, even though some of the ideas are not part of our mainstream platform.
Now let's look at what's on tap for today.
Go ahead.
Tonight's DNC programming kicks off at 6:30 p.m. East Coast time and goes through 11 p.m. You can watch all the convention coverage on the PBS NewsHour or other media outlets, but if you want commercial-free coverage with the best political analysis, well, that's available on PBS and SCETV channels statewide. Monday night, we will hear from Congressman Jim Clyburn, as well as President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden, as well as the former Secretary of State and 2016 Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. That's all going to be at the United Center where the convention is taking place. Now, on tap for the delegation on Tuesday morning, we'll hear from several speakers, including New Jersey Senator Cory Booker,
how you doing?
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro,
Go Birds.
and Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock. So stay tuned for that and much more throughout the week. And hey, go to southcarolinapublicradio.org for daily updates throughout the week. Listen to South Carolina Public Radio itself. You'll hear dispatches from Marlon Schechter. We'll also have TWISC 60 videos this evening and every evening before the PBS NewsHour, and a special This Week in South Carolina on Friday at 7:30 p.m. So much content for you people. We know you love it so much. We don't have a wind down today, but we're going to talk to you soon. I promise you. The South Carolina Lead is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producer is A.T. Shire. He misses you. He will talk to you soon. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer, and Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lead, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina. I'm in the Chicago Bulls training facility.
You're learning to dribble.
I'm learning to dribble, son.
You're doing bounce passes.
I've Stop traumatizing me from my youth. I was not very much of a basketball player.